A strange silence followed the moment of impact, not the silence of peace, but the kind that lives between disbelief and denial. In an instant, what seemed like a routine investigation turned into something far more complex, a carefully woven story designed to question every official word, every piece of footage, and every claim of truth. It's the kind of story that grips you not because it shouts, but because it whispers just enough uncertainty to make you doubt everything you thought you knew. And before we go deeper into how that narrative unfolds, take a moment to subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown of how information and misinformation can shape the way we see the world. What makes this script so arresting is the way it opens. There's no soft introduction, no gentle setup. It throws the viewer directly into chaos, building mystery and suspicion from the very first line. The writer wastes no time establishing mood or setting. Instead, the tone immediately hints at something hidden, something manipulated. That abrupt start mirrors the style of modern investigative content: sharp, fast, emotional. It captures attention before logic even has a chance to intervene. This style is intentional. It doesn't ask for trust. It demands curiosity. By presenting fragments of truth laced with doubt, the introduction creates a vacuum that the audience instinctively wants to fill. That vacuum becomes the hook, the engine that drives engagement through a promise. The truth has been buried, and only the storyteller can uncover it. Once the narrative has the viewer's attention, it builds credibility using language that sounds forensic and technical. Words like frame by frame, trajectory, and no blood appear scientific, giving the illusion of precision and objectivity. This is a subtle psychological tactic. By grounding emotional storytelling in technical language, the writer blurs the line between evidence and speculation. The audience is more likely to believe the story because it feels factual, even when it isn't supported by verifiable proof. Each technical term implies research and expertise, transforming ordinary observation into something that feels investigative. It's an approach used frequently in persuasive media, especially when the goal is to challenge official narratives. By speaking the language of science, the story earns unearned authority. It makes you think if they know this much detail, they must be right. Repetition then becomes the second layer of persuasion. The script echoes certain visual cues: no blood, synchronized movements, missing footage, over and over until they stop being mere descriptions and start feeling like undeniable facts. Repetition is one of the most powerful tools in narrative construction because it doesn't just inform, it conditions. When the same details appear multiple times, they carve a psychological groove, convincing the mind that these are the most important elements of the story. The more they are repeated, the more they overshadow any contradictory information. In doing so, repetition builds emotional certainty even when logical certainty is impossible. By the time the viewer finishes the story, these repeated phrases have become anchors, memorable fragments of truth that stick long after the story ends. Missing footage plays a central role in sustaining that tension. The claim that key moments of the video were lost or corrupted transforms a technical failure into a moral question. If evidence disappears, someone must be hiding something. This notion of deliberate concealment triggers a powerful emotional response. It shifts the viewer from passive listener to active investigator. Suddenly, the absence of evidence feels like proof of conspiracy. This is one of the most effective ways to maintain engagement. By framing every gap in knowledge as a cover-up, the narrative ensures that the audience fills those gaps with imagination and suspicion. It's not just a story anymore. It's a puzzle the audience feels responsible for solving. The brilliance of this structure is that the less the storyteller shows, the more the audience believes something enormous is being hidden. The characters in the script reinforce this dynamic by serving as the voice of resistance. They are not portrayed as journalists or officials, but as ordinary people standing against an establishment that refuses to touch the truth. This outsider framing taps into a deep cultural instinct, the belief that real truth always comes from the margins, never from authority. By aligning the audience with the underdog, the script forges emotional solidarity. Viewers begin to identify with the narrator's mission and distrust anyone outside that circle. The more the media is accused of ignoring the truth, the more the audience feels validated for listening. This clever manipulation of identity creates what psychologists call an in-group bias. Once you're part of the group that sees through the lies, you're far less likely to question the group's own assumptions. Then come the antagonists, federal agents, security teams, and nameless officials, portrayed not as protectors, but as orchestrators of deceit. This framing gives the story its moral weight. Every government action becomes suspicious, every official report a possible fabrication. By casting institutional forces as villains, the narrative transforms a single event into a broader statement about power and control. It becomes less about what happened and more about who decides what happened. That's a powerful shift. It taps into a growing societal distrust of institutions, feeding the idea that authority equals manipulation. This is how small inconsistencies in evidence can balloon into sprawling conspiracies. The audience's emotional distrust fills in the blanks where logic might otherwise question the claims. Another crucial element in this narrative is contrast, the difference between what we saw and what they showed us. This duality establishes a clear moral divide. The audience is placed on the side of truth seekers, while the opposition, media, government, security, is depicted as the gatekeeper of lies. Every time the narrator says what they don't want you to see, the viewer feels both included and empowered. It's not just information, it's access. And that sense of privileged access is addictive. It's what keeps audiences watching, sharing, and discussing long after the story ends. The contrast becomes not only a rhetorical device, but also a form of emotional manipulation, making the viewer feel chosen, like part of a secret mission to uncover what others ignore. The script's choice to focus on everyday details, watches, phones, shirts, timing, grounds the mystery in the mundane. These objects become symbols, clues suggesting a hidden network of coordination. The smallness of these details makes the conspiracy feel close, almost personal. It's easier to believe something sinister is happening when it's attached to objects you recognize. By transforming ordinary items into pieces of a larger puzzle, the story transforms perception itself. Nothing feels random anymore. Every gesture, every glance, every prop becomes loaded with intent. That's how narratives like this sustain themselves, not through big revelations, but through 1,000 small suspicions that accumulate into certainty. Emotionally, the pacing of the story is a masterclass in rhythm. It alternates between quiet analysis and bursts of accusation, mirroring the natural cycle of suspense and release. The calm moments let the audience think. The sudden spikes reignite fear or anger. This balance keeps viewers hooked, ensuring that their attention never drifts. The constant emotional oscillation creates the illusion of depth, making the narrative feel both rational and urgent. It's this careful modulation of tone that allows the story to operate on two levels at once, as a supposed investigation and as an emotional experience. Finally, the story ends where it began, with a call to action. But this isn't just a request for engagement. It's the final psychological hook. Hit subscribe, join the search. In that simple phrase, the audience is transformed from a passive observer into an active participant. It's no longer about watching a story. It's about being part of one. This shift cements loyalty because it ties identity to action. Once the viewer accepts that they're part of the movement uncovering hidden truths, skepticism fades. The story doesn't end, it recruits. In the end, what makes this script powerful isn't just what it says, but how it makes people feel. It turns uncertainty into certainty, doubt into conviction, and confusion into purpose. By blending technical jargon, repetition, emotional pacing, and identity-driven storytelling, it constructs a narrative that feels impossible to ignore. It reminds us that in the modern media landscape, truth isn't always the most compelling story, clarity is. And when clarity is replaced by mystery, the search for answers becomes endless. So, as we continue to explore how storytelling shapes belief, remember this: every narrative is an architecture of influence. The question isn't just what's true, it's who decides what truth looks like. For more in-depth analysis like this, make sure to subscribe and stay part of the conversation.